and welcome to the Blank Podcast, the podcast where we delve into those frustrating moments with some well-known people. I'm Jim Daly, and joining me, as ever, it's the legend that is Giles Bailey Phillips.
Hey Jim, how you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
All right, it's quite a drizzly day here, isn't it, up in London?
It's it's...
When I got here, because we're near King's Cross, I came out and it was blissful sunshine, and I was squinting, and I thought, I haven't got my sunglasses. And now it's torrential rain.
It's that time of year, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
start of the year.
Yeah, I suppose we're heading to... I know, we're in winter still, and I suppose spring's around the corner as well, isn't it?
I'm glad you said that, because I feel like we're in the depths of winter. So feeling like spring is around the corner.
Well, I went into my local supermarket the other day and they had hot cross buns, so I assume that spring is quite close.
I like that. That's nice. Makes you feel a bit more positive. No, it is a drizzly day, but we've got a non-drizzly pod. That doesn't make sense, does it? Fucking hell, Jim. Take that out. No, it is a bit of a drizzly day, but you know what? We're going to cheer ourselves up.
We are.
With a wonderful guest on this week's podcast. But before we'll mention who it is. It's Jake Humphrey. Absolute legend. But before we do that, should we read out some tweets?
I think we should.
This is the thing we do now at the start of the pod. We do tweets at the start.
Yeah, and then you sort of forget to get them out. So I've got a tweet here from Ian Dickens, and it says, finally got to listen to the Blank Pod episode with Dawn French and love her even more. Could have listened to another hour or so. Well, we could have talked for another hour or so on that one. Yeah. Dawn is absolute marvel. A lot of people have actually come back saying, I love her even more than I already did.
Yeah.
And I felt the same being in the room with her. She was absolute wonder. So thank you, Dawn, again for that. It was a great pod.
And thanks for that tweet. That was a nice tweet, and that was a good pod. She was just a legend. I've got one here from Deborah Fiona K, who says, I've been listening to the Blank podcast over Christmas, which Giles Bailey Phillips and Jim Daly host. It's a great podcast and worth a listen, and I found it interesting and fascinating at the same time. Keep it up, guys. That's good.
Well, thank you, Deborah.
Two good things to be at the same time. We're multitasking.
Yeah. Got one here from Forrest Rogers. He says, check out Blank Pod, a podcast with fascinating guests and hosts who enjoy listening. Love the interview with James O'Brien, another really good one. We're going through the greatest hits now.
The greatest hits. Well, we've done enough pods now. We could do greatest hits, but they're all good, to be fair. Well, look, speaking of which, our guest this week is, I think, Giles, our first sports TV presenter that we
I think it is our first sports broadcaster,
Yeah. It's Jake Humphrey.
The amazing Jake Humphrey.
Yeah.
And it's really fortuitous because I got to know Jake a bit on Twitter, and we talk a lot on the pod about our stance on Twitter and social media in general, about how we're trying to make it a little bit kinder and more positive. And we talk in depth about that over the podcast, and how Jake's obviously trying to do that as well.
Well, he seems to sort of attract a lot of criticism on Twitter, while trying to put out sort of a positive kind of presence on there, and he goes into that a bit on this pod. Yeah, and I think
he's aware that he's in an industry as a presenter, as a broadcaster, and being a broadcaster in football, particularly now. Yeah. He's sort of open to criticism. Yeah. Unfortunately, because football fans are fickle,
which we know, being Palace fans. Yeah. Other football teams are available. Yeah. But it's really interesting his stance on that, and hearing his story, how he got into the career he does, and his thoughts on, how to kind of deal with what life throws at you. So it's a really good pod. I think it's
great, and Jake's a really great guy, and he really opened up and stuff. And I think hopefully he enjoyed it as much as we did.
I hope so. He was a great guest, and this is Jake Humphrey on the Blank Podcast.
Jake Humphrey, thank you so much for being on the Blank Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
How's it going?
It's good now. I've got a coffee. It's a proper. I was just complimenting you both on recording a podcast in a coffee shop like that. That's life goals right there. Right?
Well, it's great because they've got 2 rooms here, and then they've actually got an on-air thing out. So it's actually I think it's.
Well, we should probably do a shout out to them, shouldn't we?
Well, yes, we own the Frequency Cafe.
Yeah, in King's Cross.
King's Cross, yeah.
And I didn't know I was coming to a cafe, so I assumed, as you do, I've just come on the train from Norfolk. I sort of thought, it'll be some office block called Frequency, and I'll go into, and I came and I was like, yes, because I nearly got, I'm a coffee addict, right?
Yeah, so coffee is your thing, is it?
Yeah, coffee.
And do you stick to the one type of coffee?
No,
is it always a flat?
As As long as it's good coffee,
Yeah.
I don't mind. But I'm just devouring coffee for fun.
So
it's from having kids, basically.
Yeah.
When so my first child was born in 2013, and it got to the point where she was a bad sleeper. She was an early riser, so I got one of those little Nespresso machines.
Yeah.
And it was so bad that the cup was in position and the capsule was in and the machine was on. So that in my like you both got children.
I've got a 3-month-old.
You feel drunk, don't you? You literally feel drunk with tiredness.
Yeah.
So you go in the kitchen and I would just have just about the power to press the button. And after a couple of shots of some coffee bean, there I go. But I've tried since to get rid of those just because from the environmental. I don't like the thought of those capsules.
Because you can't recycle them or something?
Well, I had a Tassimo machine and similar thing, and I upgraded last year. I'm very with my delivery with the proper. And I feel like,
you're like a barista now at home.
It's got a little penny on it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's got you can make the frothy milk.
We'll come to yours for
I know. But it is something special about making your own coffee.
It's nice, yeah. It's really. Do you know what? As I've got older, I've sort of taken on this mantra of less because I just think the environment is getting fucked by us all, basically, and we need to. But good quality, so it's fine to have nice things in life, right? We were talking about cheese before. We're so old, right? Nice cheese, nice wine, nice coffee, nice tea. Like, know where stuff's come from.
Yeah,
but just don't have too much of it. Really try and like.
But are you quite good at that, then, stopping yourself having too much? Because I'm
not coffee. When it comes to coffee. But I've decided from now on, people are only getting second-hand Christmas presents. Right now, that sounds... sounds crap, right? It sounds like if you know me, you're going to get a rubbish present. But I think it's... I'm talking about... Like, I live in Norwich, and they've got this really sort of quirky part of the city called the Lanes. My brother runs an art gallery and a picture restorers in the Lanes. And... around there, they've got all these really quirky, quite small little antique places. Do you know what? You can go in there, you can spend 20 quid, you can get a really nice little thoughtful gift for somebody, and it's had zero environmental impact because it was made 40 years ago. There's even things like, with little kids, as yours get older, you'll find that there's constantly reasons to buy them outfits, Halloween, school nativity plays, superhero parties.
Stop doing that.
Do you remember though, when we were kids, it was like your mum would just tie a bin bag around you, bit of string, you'd paint something on a plate and go to school.
Yeah.
Now everyone buys a sodding outfit from Amazon, like cheaply made in a factory, flown over. It's all these little things that we're not quite seeing.
We're quite lucky in my house. My wife's pretty good at sewing, so she can muscle something up. But not everyone's able to do that, are they? But I do get what you're saying. In that, we are causing a lot.
I think though, as a nation, let's just say global human race, we are getting more conscious of that. So I think if you were doing like second-hand presents or whatever, or passing stuff on or whatever, I think people are tuned into that. Actually.
I suppose so. Do you not think though that a lot of the we absorb a lot of information now on social media. That's where we met, you and I, on Twitter and stuff. I think that if you say that, it's almost like you have to validate everything now. Do you know what I mean? Like if I say, I'm going to try and do a bit less, I have a Range Rover, right? So someone will be like, well, he can't possibly have that opinion because he has a Range Rover, so you can't have that opinion. Well, you can kind of do your best, like, without being perfect.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I find that a really sort of awkward conversation when you have some morning TV show and you've got a vegan on and they have to prove that every single element of their life is about being a vegan. You wore leather shoes, right? Your opinion is invalid. Well, why should it be invalid? Why can't we not be perfect but still like try our best?
But if all of us did that little bit extra, I mean, I'm vegetarian, but if all of us cut out a bit of meat or whatever here and there, then collectively we're making a big difference, isn't it? Rather than like one or two people going 100% all the way.
Yeah, absolutely. What is it there? There's a phrase, something like, don't get rid of good for the pursuit of perfection or something. Like, man, none of us I'm definitely not perfect here.
Well, Jake, I don't know if you listen to this podcast, but we don't not in pursuit of perfection either.
I did listen on the way down here. I was like,
what have I let myself in for?
The Imperfect Podcast. That's a nice title.
Yeah. So, it's a nice title. It's a nice title.
Yeah.
Oh, Charles, we should have gone.
Blank Pod's good enough.
Yeah, thank you. So, you're from Cambridgeshire originally, right?
Yeah, Peterborough. I was born in Peterborough. Yeah.
What was that? And then you moved when you were about. So I have done a bit of research.
It's good knowledge. 7 or 8 years old, I went to Norwich. Yeah. So my dad was a charity worker, and he worked when you're young, you don't quite know, do you? You sort of, but basically, his job, I think, was to find social housing for immigrants coming into Peterborough. Right. So we actually lived in this amazing multicultural area. I think we were pretty much the only white family on our street in Peterborough.
Okay.
Wow.
A little street called Norfolk Street, and it was brilliant. So my sort of memories of growing up.
So you lived on Norfolk Street?
How funny is that? And then moved to Norfolk. So lived on Norfolk Street. And, yeah, probably. And we had this sort of regular run-of-the-mill Victorian house, but we'd come back from holiday, and all of the sort of local Indian kids would be in our back, because we had this big back garden with a play area, and I have this fond memories of opening the back gate, and had about 100 kids in the garden. As soon as the back gate gets open, they would just go shoo and just disappear. Because that was the life we lived. We used to just climb over each other's fences, play in gardens that were not ours. As soon as you heard like a door go or something, you'd be like, yeah. But it was brilliant. So my childhood really was being in the back garden and little Indian faces of kids that I didn't know popping over, probably quite intrigued because we were the only white family in the street, offering amazing like sweet Indian food and delicacies, and we'd go in and go to their birthday parties, all those sorts of things that a lot of white children growing up don't do, like taking off your shoes at the door, going in and kneeling in the room and passing around this amazing food. So it's a bit strange then go to Norfolk, which is most definitely not one of the country's most multicultural, ethnically dominated areas. So it was an amazing upbringing. I'm kind of glad we went through that, really. But then my dad sort of blames the Thatcher government, but basically he lost his job. Mm-hmm. And I suppose as a kid you don't really worry about it, but I remember the stress of my dad looking for work when he had 3 children. So he then did an MA. So he used to go to work and then in the evening study for an MA to sort of improve himself a bit. And then eventually he found a job again working in charities, but working for Aged Concern in Norfolk. And we all moved up there, lock and stock, when I was about 7 or 8, and actually lived in an old people's home.
And we were right. Do you remember moving much? Because, that's tricky. It's tricky at any age.
I remember
you started to probably embed in school and stuff like
that. Definitely. I remember the last time we went round our friend's house, we had like a really close group of mates around the corner, and I remember the last time we were there and hiding with all of our friends upstairs, hoping Mum and Dad wouldn't find us. With some ridiculous dream that in 20 years we're still going to be hiding it. We've never moved to Norfolk. We're hiding at the Payton's house on Lincoln Road. I remember that. And then obviously I do remember moving into an old people's home, because that is a pretty weird thing to do. But basically, Mum and Dad couldn't find a house, but Dad's job had begun, and he was working for Aged Concern. So what's the natural thing you do? Move into an old people's home. So we moved into one of the sort of buildings linked to a place called Ethel Tipple Court, right, which was an old people's home in the north of Norwich. And I don't remember his name, but I created this really nice friendship with this old bloke. And after school, I'd go into the old people's home and just help myself through the front door, walk through the sort of communal residence area, say hello to some of them, go down the corridor, and there was a room with a pool table. Me and this old boy would just sit and play pool.
Amazing.
That'd
be incredible. You got a really kind of diverse upbringing then, didn't you?
Yeah, I suppose
most sort of white kids like me, I grew up in Edenbridge in Kent, which was very white. But you've already grown up with Indian kids around the corner, and then you're moving into an old people's home. You're getting all bits of society before you're 10.
And that probably sums my parents up, really. Like, my mum and dad are quite liberal, left-wing, socialist people who kind of want to fight for the underdog. My dad especially. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, if I tell you, we used to walk down the street, and if there was a homeless person, we would not walk past them. We would stop. My dad would crouch down. He'd have a chat with them, offer them some advice, where to go. I mean, to a point where once the guy was not homeless, my dad tried to offer him his coat and we got chased down the road. So my dad picks me up and he's like shouting apologies as we're running away. This guy going, "Are you kidding me? I'm literally just a bloke sitting on the floor."
How dare you?
Exactly, how dare you? But I guess that's a little bit where it sort of comes from for me. I do have this kind of innate desire to help people and to do my bit. And I suppose it probably does come from partly my mum, who's a teacher, but probably 90% really my dad, who that is a really big thing for him.
Well, we are influenced, aren't we, by our parents?
I suppose so. Almost without knowing it, right?
Yeah. Your dad sounds like a legend.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah. He's a nice bloke, man. He just he's the kind of guy that will absolutely see the good in everybody, like only the good, which I suppose is quite difficult, because I had that upbringing where everyone's good, and then you end up in my world doing my job on social media, and it's like, it is not like that. You try and do the right thing and you just get bombarded and sort of attacked from all angles for trying to do the right thing.
It is difficult, isn't it? Because I guess as well, you've got a profile and stuff, and you probably feel a bit of responsibility to, certainly if you've been brought up in that environment, I want to help people as much as possible.
Yeah.
But there's certainly on social media, there's a lot of feeling that people think, well, I've got to take down people with big profiles and stuff. And so you probably feel like you sort of bang your head against a brick wall, I guess, at times.
Yeah. Do you know what? The guy wrote I did these videos, which you saw, which I want to do some more of, but they were just trying to share some of the stuff that I've learned, right? And from most people, it was really nice, really sort of positive reaction to it. But then there was a little group of football people who, if you're in the football world, they kind of think they have an ownership to have an opinion about what you do, because you must be a football person and only talk about and think about and discuss football. And they were sort of a group of football journalists, and they host a podcast as well, I think, and they thought it was funny to use the videos and sort of take the mick at them or whatever. And a guy wrote a piece for the Telegraph about the videos, and he described it as a suspicion of positivity. And that is exactly what we have. I think we have a suspicion of positivity. Someone has got a positive message to say, we just don't go, yeah, that's really nice. We go, hold on a minute, why have they said that? That's, if you go on somewhere and go, listen, guys, today, just do your bit, even if it's not much. Try and do a little bit, and I hope you have a great day. The kind of stuff that you put out all the time of like positivity, and you get replies, and I get replies going, "Oh, fuck off, David Brent," and it's like, yeah, that's really clever. Yeah. But why can't you just think, why not? Why? Let's just be positive. It's a weird sort of world we live in, where we have to have a little stab at that,
Yeah, like there's an agenda there.
Yeah. Do you think that though that is actual human nature, or do you think that's social media bringing out this other side of people, that they're not really even like that?
I think there's definitely a case for that, don't you think? I don't want to think people are like that, really.
No. Because I think in real life they aren't. If you walk down the street or see someone in the coffee shop, say, have a nice day, mate, they're not going to say, fuck off, mate. Yeah. They're going to say, oh, thanks, cheers.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So why...
I want to tell them to fuck off, but we're in public. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know why then online behind this, phone or whatever.
Well, because you're faceless, aren't you, I guess? Well, to a certain extent.
But it's weird. It's a weird mentality.
Yeah. Why not just be positive, though?
Yeah.
Well,
why not just do... what bad can come, right, from wanting everyone to do better and everyone to be successful and trying to share a bit of knowledge about things you've been through and whatever,
I agree. I totally agree. It's very weird.
It's odd, isn't it? Do you get much negativity when you tweet positivity?
Bits, but...
like what?
Well, similar to, it's just kind of like... I guess what's good now with Twitter a little bit more is that those sort of extended replies, they're kind of hidden now, so you can actually click whether you want to see them or not.
Yeah.
So normally if it's something slightly derogatory or off topic, Twitter started to hide them a little bit.
Yeah.
Really?
But it's too tempting to press it.
I read something today that they're going to create a new thing where you can choose to tweet and everyone can reply. Just your contacts can reply, or you can even do like a statement.
I think they've been talking about.
So there's no replies.
Yeah. Oh, really?
So, for example, let's say like football teams in my world, they tweet the team, and it's just like it becomes an endless stream of "ha, very good. What's the real team?"
Yeah.
Or what's happened to our club, or what's wrong with our manager? Are you drunk? Question.
Yeah.
All this like boring, and it's like you try and scroll through it to see what the fans genuinely think about that team, and you can't.
Yeah.
It becomes a pointless exercise. Because it's just like who can tweet the most nonsense. Right?
Yeah.
So I can see how for some areas of society that might be quite a good thing.
But it'd be frustrating because there are lots of people out there who are interesting, who have good replies, and you want to hear them. And actually, the beauty of Twitter is you do want to interact with people and have conversations and help you kind of form opinions.
That's what I love about it. You literally are speaking to people who you have never met, probably will never meet.
Yeah.
But you can share a bit of thought. They can give you a little something back, and you learn so much.
Yeah.
I mean, I've generally had a positive experience with Twitter, but maybe I've just got the right followers. But you've got a hell of a lot of followers, and I guess, like you say, you're in an industry, you're a broadcaster, but also you're broadcasting about football, which again is not it's a very binary thing. You're either on our side or you're on that side. Yeah. So it's very difficult, I guess, for you to.
I think it's a fair point. I mean, you sometimes wonder why when you work in something like football, you get accused of supporting one team or another team or being biased or clearly Jake Humphrey clearly hates my football club, and I'm like, the truth is I don't care. Actually, I like Norwich. I support Norwich. I literally don't care about another football club. I love my job. I love being on the telly, chatting. Like, what I love is hanging around with elite people, high-achieving people who've become like top-level sports professionals or top-level coaches. I love that. I'm fascinated by how they've got there. But I really don't mind if your football team loses or wins that game of football. It just does not interest me. And then sometimes my wife will be like, why do you get accused like so much of supporting one team or another? And it's a bit like Saturday Night Takeaway or This Morning or whatever, brilliant TV shows, but people are not emotionally invested in Saturday Night Takeaway. Like whether Ant or Dec wins that challenge, and maybe some people are, maybe some people are, but it's not like you're not going to get that sort of vitriolic kind of reaction to that. People are just watching it because they want to enjoy it. Whereas in the world that I'm in, it genuinely, and that's what's great about football and why I love it and why it's magical, is that it generates that kind of emotion and that love or that hate at times that very little else can. Brings people together, doesn't it? When England play, the whole country stops and goes, whoa. That doesn't happen with very many things. But the flip side is you are dealing with people who are looking at every tiny little aspect of your broadcast to see whether they think you like or don't like their football club. So now they know I don't care.
But I feel the same way because I do comedy videos and I do like spoof Man United fans, Spurs fans, and people will take screenshots of that and be like, "You're a Palace fan? Why are you wearing a Man United shirt?" And I'm like, "Well, it's clearly a comedy video."
How about you be an adult about it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, yes, it wasn't very funny, but that's not the point.
They've missed the point that it was hilarious. That's the problem.
I know, right? Well, it was shit, but
I wasn't trying to be a Man United fan. But
good one.
So obviously, what was school like? So you obviously moved. So you were
school was tricky actually. School was good until I moved, and then it was bad because I sort of I guess I moved in at a time when loads of groups of friends had sort of been formed and had been created, and that is difficult. And I think then you're then in a position where you try harder basically to kind of wheedle your way into a group. Do you know what I mean? Instead of just being you and people deciding whether they like you or not, you sort of come in and you're trying to go, oh yeah, hi, I'm Jake, I'm from Peterborough, and so that was kind of tricky. So my early years were hard. Like when I got to a couple of years later, when I started even at high school, years 7 and 8 were hard, man. I mean, there was one awful moment where I was getting changed from swimming. Took down my swimming trunks, right, and a couple of the kids in the class pushed me out the door of the changing room. No. But it was out like into the car park of the school where there was classrooms all around and everything. So I'm standing there, one hand over my knob, one hand weirdly trying to cover my bumhole for some reason, thinking, what am I doing? But hoping no one sees. And slowly you see like kids in classrooms are like, and you think, oh my goodness. Now that's mortifying enough. But then my mum wrote to the school. And one of the teachers made me stand. In the assembly, the school assembly, they went, right, can Jake Humphrey please stand up? That boy is being bullied. Oh no! It's like the sort of thing that in 2020 doesn't happen, right? Because they're so smart. But when would this have been? Like the early 1990s, it was a bit different, and they sort of thought by publicly announcing it. So that was hard. But then we moved to a different part of Norfolk. Not far away, just a few miles away, and I moved schools, and after that it was absolutely brilliant, and I loved school. It wasn't for me, like some people, school is their thing. Like my wife and her family are really into academia, and they love all of that sort of stuff. And like one of Harriet's mum's first questions when you talk about someone is, are they clever? And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like, are they a smart, sensible person, or have they got some qualifications? I don't know. For me, clever is like they're a good person to hang out with. They understand the world, right? They get the best out of those around them, but they love a qualification. Whereas, I wasn't really bothered at school. It just
no subjects really sort of took you.
I liked them. Like I liked English and I liked history. I wasn't a badly behaved kid, but at no time did it spark my imagination. To be to learn and learn and learn, which now I sort of incessantly read books. Maybe I'm sort of making up for that period, but I was just kind of probably a late developer, quite immature, not really that bothered, and I did okay at GCSEs, but then I think you pretty much can do okay at GCSEs with loads of effort or not. But did you not? What did you get for yours?
I literally got one GCSE.
No way.
Yeah.
Which was in English. Poor form.
I know. Which was in English, but same as you. I didn't really give a fuck about school. I wasn't particularly badly behaved, but just.
And it's sad, isn't it? That you're put into this category of that's.
Yeah.
He's going to be a failed one.
Yeah.
He'll amount to nothing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And by year 10, and that, I was in all the basic, the sort of foundation groups and stuff because
But maybe it just isn't for me. Everyone's different, aren't they?
Well, it's a very young age to be making decisions about what you're doing next in life or thinking about A-levels and GCSEs and uni or whatever.
Well, there's that thing, isn't there? Education's wasted on the young, isn't it? So I mean,
that's good. I like that.
I think that's
probably true.
Yeah. And like you, I did like an OU degree in my mid-20s, and I absolutely loved it. Because it was something I was, really wanting to do, yeah.
Well, I think also now you know what you like.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So now, like, if we all went to school now, it'd be great. We'd all choose a subject. We'd be really interested
I change my career every 18 months. I get bored and think, I'll do this time, I'll try this, yeah.
And how many times, actually, it's funny you should say this because we were looking through some old books. When we went to pick up the kids from Mum and Dad's a couple of weeks ago, we were looking through my old school books. And I was saying to my wife, when have I ever used that information that I the right layers and layers about back in the day? Maybe you do, but you don't realise it. But the sort of the light bulb moment for me was getting some work experience in the telesales department of the Eastern Daily Press. And getting like this glowing report back saying Jake Humphrey was the best work experience kid we've ever had. He totally was at ease in the workplace. He could chat to people. We sent him out to do errands and this and that, and he was responsible. And I remember my mum and dad and my teachers, like, the response was, "Is this the same child who sits in our classroom week in week out?"
What were you doing at the work experience?
I was just helping out in the telesales department. Okay. But I still can remember vividly just getting into the world of work, and it just felt right. I mean, the job was nothing. The job wasn't the reason for me thinking, this is great. It was being around adults where we were all on a level. I wasn't the pupil anymore. I was one of the people in the office space and being given responsibility, and it was kind of like a light bulb moment, really, that the more effort you put in out there, the more that comes back your way. And that was kind of the first time I'd experienced that. I mean, it didn't have any impact on me at school because I then went and did my A-levels after that and failed them badly. I got an E, an N and a U.
What A-levels were you doing?
English, psychology and politics, which was tricky because my mum was a teacher at that school.
Oh, okay.
So that was, and I still have this flashbulb memory of arriving home with my results in my hand and my dad standing at the window with a bottle of champagne fresh out the fridge, looking expectantly. And I just went in, and that sort of the sort of image of putting a gun to your head and going like that. I just walked in, put the results on the side, and went as if to say, my head's gone. Then I went upstairs and sort of let them dissect it themselves. But Mum and Dad had some guests with them, and the woman who was there, she wasn't like a psychic, but she's someone that sort of felt she had power to sort of understand situations. I remember this, and she came upstairs and she said, "Just so you know, this is the best thing that's ever happened to you." And it even gives me goosebumps now when I think about that. And I looked at her thinking, you've got no idea. I've just failed my A-levels. Yeah. My mum is a teacher at the school. My place at university has gone begging.
My dad's drinking champagne.
I don't know what I'm going to do. I've missed out on a glass of champagne. This is a nightmare. Yeah. And then, weirdly, I went back to school because you had to write a letter in those days to the school to ask if you could go back again and redo it. Now, you can imagine how embarrassing this is because all my mates had gone off uni, travelling, doing all the fun stuff, and I'm back at school. And even kids a year below. Do you remember you never spoke to them, did you?
No.
They were like little kids. You would not speak to a kid a year below you. Suddenly I'm in their class and they're looking at me like,
he's the older kid.
Why is that guy from the year above back here?
Yeah.
But it's just a case of swallow your pride. And
big time, yeah.
So I went back, and the day I returned, the very day, my politics teacher, Mr. Brogan, had a letter, and it was from a local TV company called Rapture Television, who were setting up in the Anglia TV building in Norwich, looking for politics students to go on their show and talk about politics. Now, if I'd have got a place at uni, I'd have been at uni.
Yeah.
Would never have known about this letter. So I was there, responded to the letter, actually went in, saw them and said, look, I know you want people to come and talk on your show about politics, but actually I failed my A-levels. I know this isn't like a great sale. But I failed my A-levels. I'm basically a failure. Can I come and work with you? So I just said to them, look, I've messed up my exams. All my mates have gone off and doing more exciting things. Why don't I come in and work for you? So I used to work for them, and I would work all day Saturday and Sunday, moving sets, answering phones, doing the auto cue, sound system, whatever it was, and I'd get £5 cash at the end of Sunday.
Wow.
So what sort of shows were they put? Was it kind of news?
The show, yeah, it was a youth channel called Rapture Television, and they were producing loads of original content, and I worked on a show called Exposure, which I suppose you would say is like a magazine show, a bit like Live and Kicking. I mean, we're talking absolutely minuscule budgets, really. Everyone mucking in and helping out, and they ran a competition, but they didn't really have any viewers, so they didn't get any entries to the competition. So me and the other work experience kids were asked to enter, which involved making a home video. So I made a home video, and then I'm sitting, and I remember operating the auto cue, and it was a live show. It was a live 2-hour show. I'm operating the auto cue for the presenters, and they announced me as the winner of this competition, going to Paris to host a programme. So there I am, from failing my A-levels, I'm in Paris, recording a show with them, and then a few months later, the presenter, a guy called David, left, and they said to me, look, he's left, we need someone to stand in and host the show. You were quite good in Paris, do you want to do it? So within that year of failing A-levels, I was doing a live TV show, Saturday and Sunday, and the best part was they doubled my money. £10.
£10.
Yeah. Amazing. In the dream.
Going up in the world.
So, but how did it feel doing those? Did you feel natural?
Yeah,
straight away.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's I've never found it difficult being on the television, which is also strange because at school I was not. Everyone assumes I did, drama and amateur dramatics and was involved. I was the quiet kid, man. I didn't do any of that sort of stuff. I didn't do any drama. I wasn't in any school plays. I can't dance. I can't sing. I suppose I just like talking and sharing experiences, and I suppose the biggest thing really, and it's always hard, isn't it, talking about your own skills, but I guess empathy and part of the issue why I struggled a bit at school early on, and was the teacher said he's just a bit sensitive. Like most years 7 and 8 boys are just barreling about kicking a football, and he's sort of a bit more into how people are feeling emotionally or what's working and what isn't in there.
We'll soon jump that out.
Exactly. We'll sort that out. Take his pants off and push him out that door.
And then we'll announce it.
Exactly. We'll desensitise that young man. But I think that was then the thing that maybe helps me in my job,
Yeah, but from what you were telling us earlier about growing up, with all these families in the back garden and then playing pool with the old boy in the old people's home, clearly there was a connection to other people there already.
It's funny though, isn't it, how life just throws these little things your way.
Yeah.
And sometimes they can be an absolute trauma. Other times they can be almost insignificant. Other times you can realise their significance at the time. But actually when you get to the age that we're all at, you two are probably younger than me, but when you get to this age, you're like, you can finally put the pieces together. And it's difficult to explain this to young people, isn't it? Because as you're going through and you're trying to join the dots of life, you can't actually see at that moment where the next bit is you need to join. Only afterwards do you go, aha, right, it was this that led to this, that helped this, who spoke to this person, that meant I went there, so I did this. That's what's really difficult when you try to explain to your kids, or even anyone, when they say, how do you do that? You're like, well, kind of just happened, but you just have to have an open mind for trying to join the dots as you go along,
Or just be open in that moment to just kind of exist and live through it and be like, okay, this is happening. I don't really know what it is or where it's going, but it might be something I'll look back on at some point and just... But it's hard because, like you say, there can be traumatic moments, they can be nervous moments, exciting moments, but sometimes it's just about being in that moment and living it.
Yeah.
But it is difficult.
So that lady was kind of psychic then?
Yeah, well, exactly. That's the thing. And my parents always remind me of her. They're like, don't forget what our friend said. She knew it was going to be a good
3 weeks later, she won the lottery.
Well, that's the thing. If you really know what's going to happen.
Yeah. So you were working for Anglia Television. So what was the next move after that then? Did things start happening quickly, or was it?
Well, yeah. So I always enjoyed my time on the telly. Like, I loved just being on the telly, and I did find it easy. And then I was working in the office, so I then got offered a job, basically. I suppose that's the next bit to tell you, is that I was doing this sort of £10 a week thing until my A-levels finished. Then they offered me a job, and it was 6 or 7 grand a year working on Rapture TV and just sort of getting through, really. But those were, again, at the time, I didn't realise it. But if you ask me now, the most formative period in my whole career, it was then. Because I was having to learn so much about the industry, because I was working at a place that had no money, so everyone had to do every job. That was brilliant. And I applied. Someone said to me, you need to create a show reel. And I wasn't really sure what a show reel was, but I asked them, and they said, it's like your best few minutes. So I remember sitting with an editor, paying them a few quid and creating loads of VHSs, and I typed out my name on all the, the labels that used to go on the spine. Jake Humphrey, and then my phone number, and sticking them on for hours, and then just posting them to any TV show that I wanted to work on, basically. And one of the early ones that came back was Blue Peter. And I remember going in and meeting them in the Blue Peter Garden. That was like a big deal for a young guy.
That's a big deal.
This is the Blue Peter Garden. And then I got through to the audition process for like the final 3 people.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, this is my moment. I'm going to be a Blue Peter presenter. That is the lifelong dream, right?
Yeah. Get the badge.
So I went down, and I still have such a sort of like vivid memory of that day. I remember I had to meet an animal called a kinkajou. Have you even heard of what a kinkajou is?
No.
Look it up on you. If you listen to this now, Blank Pod, look up kinkajou. It was like a sort of little bit like a koala bear, from what I remember. But I had to do an interview with the guy holding a kinkajou.
I was going to interview the kinkajou.
No, that would be.
We're really going to see your skills.
Classic Blue Peter.
We're going to see how good the Dr. Dolittle starts.
And then what did I have to do? I had to jump on a trampoline and then do a make.
Wow, they really put you through the riggers.
And they filmed it, so it was that was the first time that they kind of showed the audition process on the show. So I ended up on Blue Peter as one of the auditionees, and it was when Simon Thomas ended up getting the job. So, do you know what? Every time I go into my mum and dad's lounge, the smell of their living room, and even now, every time I walk in, reminds me of the day I got home from that audition. I think my senses were just so, like, everything was just raging. Do you know what I mean? It was such a huge thing. I was at TV Centre. I was in late teens, maybe my early 20s. I was suddenly in Studio One at the BBC with all these massive cameras and the Blue Peter presenters and the lights and the smells, and jumping on a trampoline, doing my dream job, and then suddenly I was back in a living room in Norfolk, and it was like, you know, like a movie where they go backwards through time. It was like that, and I was like, whoa, that just happened to me. So I still get memories of that. But then the next day, or even the day after that, my dad woke me up in the morning and said, I got a letter for you, and it was literally, thanks very much for auditioning for Blue Peter presenter number 34. You weren't successful on this occasion. Here's your show reel returned. I was like, oh man, they're not even keeping hold of the show reel.
Oh dear.
But
did it feel like a bit of a kick in the teeth?
It did actually. Yeah, I remember just going, no. But actually, quite a good thing to prepare me for what was to come, which is an industry where you basically have to accept criticism and knockbacks and negativity, and it takes a lot of time to get used to it, because it's always very personal in my job. Even then, I remember a couple of years later speaking to the person that decided it was a no, and I remember them just saying, like, oh, you just didn't connect with the camera enough, or you didn't show warmth well enough, or we didn't think that you were quite ready, you didn't look right. It's always quite personal. If you don't like a TV presenter, it's quite a personal thing. It's a subjective industry, so you have to get used to that, and that was probably quite a good early lesson for that. But then, amazingly, the lady who was in charge of the auditions process was a woman called Amanda Gabitas, and there was another guy called Paul Smith, who was head of music at the BBC at the time, and he rang I went back to Rapture, just carried on at Rapture TV as I was, and I got a phone call. And this guy said, hello, can I speak to Jake Humphrey? I said, yeah, speaking. And he said, I was watching your show at the weekend. You were a shining star in a sea of shit. So he wasn't a big fan of the actual channel, but clearly thought I was okay. So while I was at Rapture, he invited me to come to London and host a few episodes of a show called Top of the Pops at Play, which was on Play UK, and it was in the evenings between 4 and 6, and it was just playing music videos. But it was like Scott Mills and Josie Darby, Vernon Kay. So again, it was a good little first thing for me to just start to see life outside Norfolk.
And with all those guys at a similar level to you, or they would they?
No, they would have been much more established. Yeah. I was kind of the guy coming in and having a go and seeing how I got on, and always sort of going for a bit of feedback afterwards. Yeah. And generally being told I wasn't quite ready, but to keep trying, and I carried on. Didn't have the warmth. And then a few months after that, Amanda Gabitas, who'd sorted out my Blue Peter audition, and this guy Paul, they were tasked with finding presenters for the new children's BBC channel. And one of them would have mentioned my name, and the other one would have gone, well, I know him. And then that was it. They offered me a job, so I moved from Norfolk to become a children's BBC presenter, and I was sort of one of the first presenters at the launch of the new channel in 2002, early 2002, which was just the most amazing opportunity. But again, it was a kind of a realisation of how fortunate I was. And, you know, I always sort of, I'm a big believer in fate, right? Mm-hmm. And I suppose you have to be, because not only would I have not been in that position if I hadn't failed my A-levels, it kind of, things just fell into place. I sort of felt, and I do feel now, like an extremely fortunate, lucky person to have been in that position, you know, that those two people just so happened to be the ones charged with setting up that channel.
But I guess on the same respect, we do make our own luck as well, and the fact that you put yourself out there in the first place and actually went for those auditions with Blue Peter and stuff, which, you know, some people might not have had the nous or you know, the gall to do that. Yeah. So I guess, you know, putting yourself out there was important as well. Yeah,
probably. But it's quite easy, I think, at that age. You know, you're so
fearless.
I think you're so you're fearless. You're not sort of knocked down by all the things that, like, I think if I now know what I know about the world, I would be much more reticent at that age to just get myself to London and walk into an office and, hello, here I am, I'm your next Blue Peter presenter. Yeah. And that sort of fearlessness is quite a good thing, really, you know.
Yeah.
I think. So that was me in London then, and that was the beginning of my time on.
I'm just thinking, Shining Star in a Sea of Shit is a good name for a book.
Yeah. There you go. I'll put that in my back
Throw
pocket.
it out there.
Remember that, yeah.
So what was that like then moving to London? Because obviously that's the bright lights of the city, and I guess, is it another one of those sort of moments, you know, where you're thinking, this is...
It was great.
This is the moment.
It was brilliant. You know, going to work at the BBC as a children's BBC presenter was just amazing. And every day was.
Did you feel emboldened?
Yeah, most definitely. And I do you know what? I suppose I felt good as well, because like the BBC had employed me to work on their channel. I felt I definitely felt, I'm actually okay at doing this job. And again, that was such an important period for me, because you have to learn by your mistakes, right? You spoke about this on the podcast that you did with Ben Miller, didn't you? Like, I am a firm believer in making mistakes, and I had to make mistakes somewhere to learn what the problems were. Now, if I made those mistakes now on a Premier League football game, it's a very high-profile place to be pulled down a peg or two. On kids' TV, on the CBBC channel in the early 2000s, I made an inordinate number of mistakes, and it was okay. It's a bit like a pilot, you know. You need to do a certain number of hours to get your wings, right? Yeah. And I think it's like that with television. And it's a shame now that there's so much less live TV. There's no live channels on air for 12 hours a day like we were then, because that's where the next breed of presenters have come from. And if you look at everyone from Anton Deck to, you know, Holly Willoughby and Philip Schofield and Fern Cotton, and all these people have come through that world because you learn how to do it. And that was such an amazing time, and I learned how to be a presenter effectively, which has sort of stood me in good stead following on from that. I suppose the only difficult period then was, I remember my mum and dad leaving, and that was hard, man, when they just dropped me off at my flat and they left. And I actually went through quite a dark period then, which you would now say it was a mental health problem. But in those days, you were just thinking, what is wrong with me? I just felt, genuinely believed I was mad, basically. And it was a really weird time, because I went from this super confident guy on the telly, and I was still working every day on children's BBC, but not eating and getting thinner and thinner, and just really struggling. I went to see someone, which I think was the absolute best thing I could have ever done, and she kind of just explained to me that this is a really common thing that young men go through. It's a period that where your brain is kind of either catching up with what's gone on, or just trying to work it all out and deal with everything that's gone on. You know, I wasn't a guy that had been through a trauma, I was someone that was really lucky and had this great job, and that almost made it worse. You know, it was almost embarrassing to say, I feel like crying. I feel like I felt like I was mad. I didn't really know in what respect I felt I was mad. But I remember one time looking on the internet to see if I could employ a bodyguard, right, to be with me all the time to make sure I didn't do anything mad.
Wow.
But that in itself is a madness to look for that, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that was the one period in my life where it maybe was all a bit much for my brain to deal with, because until then it had just been this flow of good stuff, and it was almost like I don't know, maybe it was like a reprogramming phase maybe that my brain went through or something. But that was it was tricky.
I don't know if it's because you got to where you wanted to be, maybe.
Yeah.
And then, but also you didn't have your family around.
Yeah, that was probably part of it, I suppose.
Yeah.
You do need that support network, especially at that age. Of course, like early 20s or something.
Yeah, I
like
do in my early 20s.
It's a young. People in their early 20s are young, you know.
And I think of it, you know, often when I see really sad stories of, you know, young men, and we all know the biggest killer of men under 40 is suicide. When I see stories of young guys, I often think, I wonder whether they had exactly the same experience that I had. I mean, instead of going and seeing someone, they take the alternative route. And my grandma killed herself, and I suppose that created a weird relationship with suicide for me. And I remember someone saying at that time, the irony with suicide is that by killing yourself, you've shown you're actually strong enough to live. And I think someone saying that at that time, it meant that when I did go through this difficult period, even when it was horrible, suicide was not even an option for me because of that message that if you've killed yourself, you're strong enough to live. So whenever that thought even entered my head, it was like, well, if I can do that, I'm strong enough to live, so therefore I need to stick around. Yeah. And that was you know, again, like a horrendous traumatic period for my family when my grandma did that. 10 years later, maybe saved me. I don't know.
You don't know. Yeah, but you made that decision to go and see someone, and it's that reaching out and finding a support network. And you might not have the family literally with you, but you're then finding support from a counsellor or whoever. It's a big step to do, and it's at that age, that's a really bold step to do.
It is, and I just like to think that it's easier than ever now. You know what I mean? To go and to speak to people about whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling. My now wife, who was then my girlfriend, was brilliant because she didn't judge me at all. She just went, "Of course you're not. Why don't you go and speak to someone about it?" And and the fact that she didn't go, "Oh, really? You think you're mad? I think I might go out with someone else then." Which is a equally perfectly normal and understandable reaction. The fact that she went, nonsense. Go and speak to someone and you'll be fine. That was probably really helpful as well, I think.
But there is an embarrassment, I think, attached to it. Again, keep going back to that age. At that age, you're embarrassed about everything, but I think there is an embarrassment attached to it.
I don't know what we do, though, because we're trying now, aren't we, to do the total opposite of what it was like when we were kids, which is talk to anyone and everyone about anything and everything. And I don't know, maybe it's too soon to know whether this is the answer. Do you know what I mean? Whether the stats will back up that in 10 years' time, this period now, where it kind of feels like we're talking more than ever, was the defining moment.
Did it make a difference?
Yeah.
I think so. But you always feel a bit better, don't you? I mean, sometimes after doing these podcasts, we come away, I just go home on the train and feel a bit better just from having a chat with someone, having a bit of a connection, maybe revealing one or two things about myself. But I don't know if it's just because we are social beasts that we need a bit of a chat. And even if the chat isn't like really deep about how you're feeling, maybe it's just about how you're feeling that day or something that's happened to you in the coffee shop or whatever. But it's just that little connection. Isn't it?
In a world where we're probably less connected than ever because we're using these phones. And,
Yeah, which is the sort of weird thing of it, isn't it? That we're, like social media was created so we connect with each other more, but we've come to a point where we're connecting even less. I mean, I've made a real point this year is I want to see people in the real world more. Putting less time on there.
So important.
Yeah. Because we do, like you say, we're social animals and we need human connection.
It's unhealthy, I think, don't you?
Yeah.
And I think it changes so much how we perceive the real world as well, because we're all looking at social media, which is not real, which is, and all of us will admit to it, I'm sure, that even what we do, and I'm not the sort of person that just wants to make my life look amazing, like, oh, here I am on holiday. But you still, you don't put the boring, shitty stuff, do you, on there? Like, I've just been to the toilet.
I've eaten a Weetabix.
I've just fallen down the stairs. I've just eaten a Weetabix. I've just bumped my car. None of you do something amazing, and it's like a natural human reaction. I go, I should better put that on Instagram. Oh, I might tweet about that.
Yeah.
So even though we don't want to overtly show off, what feels shareable is the big stuff and the good stuff and the special stuff. So then we end up looking at good, special, amazing lives through the lens of our own normal lives, and everyone's life feels normal by comparison to what they see on social media. So I think, God, it's unhealthy, man.
It is.
We're comparing real to fake.
Completely.
Compare and despair, they call it, don't they?
Yeah. Compare and despair, really.
Yeah, because that's what you're doing. You're comparing yourself to other things. Someone's doing better than you at certain thing, or, like your podcast is not as good as someone else's, whatever it might be.
But it's
then you putting yourself into a position where
someone tweets, "Oh, so delighted that my podcast won an award." Naturally, you two then go, "Well, what?
Yeah,
bloody hell, man!" Now, for all you know, it was some podcast award that no one's ever heard of. That their mate might have been on the panel. It doesn't.
Or for
matter.
A category that we're never going to be in.
There you go.
Yeah.
But you naturally go, "They won, I didn't."
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Despair.
Yeah.
And you don't compare yourselves with anyone else, I think, is the answer.
Well, I do that with other comedians. I see comedians doing gigs, being like, "Oh, this gig was brilliant." And I think, why am I not getting booked for that gig? And then I think, I didn't apply for that gig.
There you go.
So now, if I see it, I try and follow them and send them an email and be like, "Can I come and do your gig or something?"
Just ploughing your own furrow, right?
Yeah.
And it's not easy. It's so not easy because we're in a world now where we're constantly shown everyone else's stuff, which we never were before.
Yeah.
But if you can just do your own thing away from everyone else and be happy with what you've done, that is the healthiest and best way to be, right?
Yeah.
Has to be.
And you will get better.
This is your life. This is your story, man. It doesn't matter. It does not matter what everyone else is up to or what they've done or not done.
Yeah.
This is your story.
Agreed. And then you will get happier. You'll get better.
Yeah.
You'll meet other people. You'll make those connections. Everything you wanted will come if you just, I totally agree. Your own story. That's a really nice way of putting it. Really nice way of putting it.
So do you have a bit of a love-hate thing with social media generally?
Yeah, I do, really. Yeah, I do. Because I'm not a natural social mediaer. I don't feel very good at it. Do you know what I mean? And I don't quite also know why I do it. Like, there's loads that I don't put on there, and then I find myself doing really fun stuff, like being in the garden with the kids, and part of my brain is going, well, maybe you should let people know that you're doing this so that they can realise you're a cool guy with a couple of kids and you're having a great laugh in your garden and everything's lovely. And then another part of my brain goes, well, why the fuck do I want to share this moment with anybody else? This is it's really, and it's a difficult thing to get your head into, I think.
Is there a weight of expectation because you've got quite a large following as well?
Yeah, I think so. And there's also this sort of expectation that if, predominantly my work is on BT Sport, right? So if you don't subscribe to BT Sport or you don't like football, you might not see me on the telly. So then this is the voice in my head going, oh, you better be tweeting about all the other stuff you're doing so people who don't watch BT Sport know that you're really successful and you're doing great and your life's good. And then again, I think, well, why? Can't I just be me? And this is me talking very honestly here. And I think a lot of people maybe feel the same but maybe wouldn't say it. It is for me, personally, it is a constant challenge. It's like a tug of war. I do a tweet, it gets loads of likes, I feel great. Why do I feel great about that? Why the fuck does that matter?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Why does that matter?
Yeah.
But it sort of does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Get those endorphins flowing.
It is. Well, it is. Yeah.
Like, some of the videos that you do, that you share on your Twitter account, Charles, I think are brilliant. But I'm sure the truth is, if you go on there and it's had 7,000 likes, you're like, woo!
Yeah.
Nailed it today.
7,000?
70,000. And if you get 150, you're going, well, that didn't fly. I went,
Yeah.
But again, it's a strange metric to judge your success by, isn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter.
But then we're in that world. So I'm going to sort of consciously, with my social media, I'm going to try really hard not to show off because I think it's bad for other people's mental health. It's also not the truth. Like, there are some parts of my life that are brilliant, like everyone's. There are some parts that are shit.
Yeah.
So if I'm either going to show all of it or none of it, probably none.
Yeah.
Right, is better than cherry picking the good stuff. But I also think I want to really try to be a bit like you actually, and just be positive on social media. No snipes, no little I'm going to reply to that. just spreading the good stuff. Imagine if we all just put up positivity on there. It'd be good. And that's why I wanted to do those videos towards the back end of last year, because I suppose part of the story that we've discussed really of failing the A-levels and having a little sort of mental health episode and losing a family member in a traumatic way and, suffering with bullying and, not coming from a family who work in the media, just kind of ploughing my own furrow and ending up where I am now. Like, I'm not Mother Teresa, right? I don't claim to be. But I like to think that there are elements of what I've learned along the way and how I've got to this point that might just be helpful for somebody, because I think we assume certain people get certain things in the world, and I do not believe that. I honestly think you can create from this life whatever you want, right? And there are ways to do that, and I think the number one way is taking complete responsibility for every single thing in your life. Like, I'm a firm believer in fault versus responsibility. So, if you have a traumatic episode as a child, it's not your fault. Of course it isn't. But do you know what? It's your responsibility to deal with that and to live the life you want. If your wife walks out on you, hopefully it's not your fault. It might be. But even if it's not your fault, well, it's your responsibility to deal with that. Yeah. In all these situations, it's yours. And if you can get to a point mentally where you think, right, I'm going to take, even if it's absolutely not my fault, right? If I walk out of here now and get hit by a cab and it breaks my leg, it's still my responsibility to kind of deal with that, go to the hospital, get my leg repaired, try and work if I can't work. Do you know what I mean? It's not about, well, he drove into me, I can't believe he did that. Because the longer you're thinking about the fault, the less time you're taking the responsibility. And I mean absolute, total responsibility for every single part of your life, every single one. Your health, your wealth, your house, your kids, your mental health, your physical health, your friendships, your failures, definitely your failures as well as your successes. Everything. If you can do that, it's the most empowering thing, and that's kind of where I want to try and get to in 2020 if possible. See where it goes, because what's the point blaming anything else?
Well, also in that moment of blaming people, you're just sort of wasting time that could be spent taking responsibility and cracking on and finding the positive in it and turning a negative into a positive experience. We don't have much time on this planet, and any time wasted blaming other people is life ticking away again. So, yeah, I think that's a good way to approach 2020.
What do you think?
I think it's...
Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, and actually we talked on a previous pod about the fault and responsibility thing with Jess in Piazzi. Because it is an empowering thing. I think we all need to do that more. We definitely all need to do it more. I need to do it more. It is difficult. It is difficult.
Because it also means no excuses, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, that even when you try and do it, you can always hide. Like, excuses is something to hide behind, basically.
Yeah.
Why is that job not worked out? Well, my boss didn't like me. All right. That's an excuse. You're hiding behind that.
Yeah.
What about your responsibility?
Yeah. But even that,
ownership.
My boss didn't like me. Why not? Well, is it something I can change? Is it something I can work on? Can I work harder in a certain aspect or something?
And I can't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I can't see any negatives in it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is there a negative there somewhere about taking complete responsibility? Apart from the fact it probably puts a bit of pressure on yourself, and that could lead to problems. But is there anything bad about just saying, right?
Well, it's difficult.
Taking responsibility.
It's difficult.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, isn't it?
But if you recognise that it is difficult, this isn't going to be an easy step.
Well,
does that help with
that?
it?
And I was thinking in your life, when you had that mental health crisis, you recognised that was what's happening, and you took responsibility for it, and you did something about it. So these are the sort of things you've been doing yourself anyway, probably
without really realising.
Yeah.
With support though from my family, which
of course,
is also a crucial,
a
crucial part of it, I suppose, isn't it? But
yeah. No, we do need that support. Oh man, there's a lot of takeaway from this pod this week. Yeah.
Well, we always feel like
that's why I like this pod, because every week before pod I come away with something different to think about, which is I think we all need. Keeps us
it's
going.
nice just to sit and chat though. I mean, for people that can't see this home, there's no notes in the room. There's nothing. It's just literally sort of. You consciously do it like that, right?
We don't do prep. You do prep.
I've made some notes, but I thought, you know what? Sometimes you don't need them.
No, well, I think again, you'll know as well. Sometimes
when you sit in the pub with your mates with notes going.
Exactly. Now Jim said something in 1996.
Wait, Charles' round last week. Now it's my round.
But it's funny though, isn't it? Because like a podcast is like joining a conversation, right?
Yeah.
it's who wants to join a conversation where two of the people have got notes.
Yeah.
One other person hasn't got notes, the other one's not even in the room. Like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Just to do it like this, hopefully, I think.
But do you find, I guess with work it's a bit different because obviously, like you got a finite amount of time and stuff, and you have to make notes. But do you find it's a similar? Sometimes you're in the room with the guys chatting about the game, and you can just be a bit of a conversation rather than.
The big enemy in my job is time.
Yeah.
You know, so if you've just come off the back of a game, you might only have 45 seconds to get to a break, and you have to hit that to the second, and you've got to also talk about the league table and the fixtures for tomorrow, for example. So sometimes you find yourself being salacious, which I don't like to be. I don't want to be like a kind of headline writer type presenter. But you have only got 20 seconds to really find out how Rio Ferdinand feels about Manchester United. So instead of going, it was a difficult night for Manchester United, Rio, you have to go, Rio, that isn't good enough, is it? You won titles in this football team. Now they can't even win games. What is going wrong? And then people come and go, I can't believe you're always looking for a headline. You're looking to stir it. But you're up against the clock, and it's your job to get something really juicy.
Yeah.
You know, my job is like being a referee, really. You hopefully don't notice me, and I let the game flow, and I get the best out of the people that are there. But it's a skill to prod them. Otherwise, they would just sit there and try and say as little as possible.
Because they don't want to get, they don't want to
write headlines and get in trouble. Have to deal all week with the press ringing up, going, "What did you mean by that?" But
and did you have someone in your ear, sort of saying, like, "Ask me about this, ask me about this"?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I use a thing called open talkback. So you've got about 7 or 8 voices, all. So you're hearing the director and the PA and the producer and the sound guy, and there's a lot to. I suppose
there's a lot to juggle.
Yeah,
it's a lot to juggle. So really, when people if there's 2 criticisms that social media throws my way, number one is that he's smug, right? And I assume that is because people think, if I was on the telly talking about football next to Paul Scholes, I'd feel pretty smug. Because I don't feel smug, and I don't think I am. But it's a very common criticism that maybe if someone's on the telly, they just must be. So
I think it's an easy criticism.
So. Yeah. So there's that, and also, he knows nothing about football. Now, that may well be true. But actually, my job, I think, is 90% not knowing about football. Like, while we're on air, I am honestly thinking, right, how long is left?
Yeah.
Have we covered the points that are necessary? What are the graphics that are coming next? What is the producer saying to me? What shot is the director on? Have both the guests spoken as much as each other? Am I leaning across so there's a shadow over someone's face? How long's left on the entire part? And then, at the very end of all of those other thought processes, then you're sort of trying to do your football knowledge. They're there for the football knowledge.
And also, what did Rio just say?
Exactly. Well, that's the other thing. I'm just there to get us on and off air, right, as seamlessly as possible, and to try and make it look good. And
has there been any, to bring it back on brand to the pod, has there been any blank moments, particular blank moments where things didn't work, conversation didn't work, or it really went blank, or, literally no one was talking or anything like that?
I suppose in terms of blank moments, no. I suppose I'm relatively lucky that, when I do feel like I'm most at ease and I'm most in control when I'm on air and I'm doing the job that you two are doing, really asking the questions. I'm not great at being interviewed. I much prefer, because I've done it all my life.
Oh, I beg to differ.
It's going pretty well.
And asking the questions and stuff. So no, not really. And there's certainly been no sort of blank moments. There's been moments where I definitely wish I'd said something or done something differently.
Yeah.
And you get criticism, but people don't realise all the things that are going on in your head, or the things that you're hearing and stuff. So it's a challenging environment, but it shouldn't look like a challenging environment, because that's when you've done your job right. It should look like an easy job.
Yeah.
And maybe for some people it is easy. Although I love presenting, I find presenting easy. The actual live environment of a sports event where you've got no auto cue, no script, and it's kind of visceral, you're reacting to what happens. It is a challenging environment, but that's what I love. That's what I love about sport. Like, I do it because people care about it.
Yeah.
It's not just on in the corner of the room filling time. People specifically tune in to watch that sports event, and it's your job to make that event as exciting and as compelling as you can for those people. And you get to see amazing people at work, like real high achieving elite individuals. And it's one of my frustrations when people criticise sports people for being lazy or not caring or whatever. You know, we're talking about people who in the gym take themselves daily to a place that you and I probably have never been in our lives, right? To try and be the best that they can be. And they're 19 years old and they're in a stadium of 70,000 people on a TV audience of millions, if not billions, around the world in a huge game of football. And we're criticising them for a misplaced pass or a moment of petulance or a moment where they sort of lost control of themselves. Sometimes we do have to remember, like, we're talking about kids here.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, I'm double the age of most of the people that I am discussing on the television, and that we sometimes forget that. You know, we expect them to be superhuman, but then we don't want them to be robots at the same time because we want to see their personality. Then we see it, and then we criticise them for having a personality we don't like. It's like, oh my goodness.
We do ask, certainly in football. I mean, Giles and I are Palace fans, and we do ask a lot of our footballers.
Yeah.
We ask them to be a bit of everything.
Absolutely.
And it's really unfair. You wouldn't ask that of anyone else that works in either industries or...
And then we have a big go at them for earning good money.
Yeah.
And my answer to that is, when did you last moan about what Tom Cruise earned to be in a film?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, what...
lawyers earn.
Elton John earns for touring the world. Like, no one goes to watch a game of football for the referee, for the managers, for the board members, for the owners, for the directors. We're there for the players, right? Give them the money. And you know what? When they get the money, great, they're paying 50% tax. Excellent. That's lovely. Let's embrace that and be pleased about it.
Yeah.
You know? And I also think, actually, football's probably got a long way to go. You know, if Lewis Hamilton's reportedly on 40, 50 million quid a year, well, apart from Messi or Ronaldo, there's no footballers earning that. There's no Premier League player earning that sort of money. And it's a multi-billion pound industry. So...
Well, they're also only earning it until they're 35.
Yeah.
Which obviously is, very
limited, difficult. But
career.
What do they do after that?
Well, there's big numbers, isn't there? There's a lot of, a lot of footballers fall at... Was it like 50% of footballers, maybe not Premier League, but lower league, are bankrupt within 10 years?
Yeah.
90% of that is gambling. There's a lot of problems, actually. From the, like you say, these high-achieving people that have got all this going on, then suddenly they retire and there's nothing. And they're...
and I think the clubs obviously there's a responsibility from the clubs to make sure that players, when they're retiring, have got...
And there aren't many industries where someone goes, you can never do that again.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Your legs are gone.
Yeah.
You will never, ever... And it's not like you will never walk in that office and type on that computer for the rest of your life. Like you are saying, you will never walk into that stadium and be adored and have your name cheered to the rafters and be a hero and be a gladiator ever. How can you not suffer a mental health problem when you get told at 32 that you will never do that again?
Yeah.
I wouldn't cope. If someone said to me, you'll never be on the telly ever again for the rest of your life, go and find something else to do. It doesn't matter what's in your back pocket in terms of your money.
No.
That is hard to deal with.
Yeah. That buzz that you get from doing that thing you love is suddenly never going to... I can get on a stage and tell jokes until the day I die. There might be no one in the audience, and they might not like the jokes, but I can still do it. And still do it and get that buzz.
Was sports broadcasting where you wanted to be?
Yeah, well, I grew up watching Des Lynam.
Yeah. Well,
so,
we all did.
And I remember when I was on Kids Telly, I actually had a meeting with the head of talent for the BBC at the time, and I went and said to them, look, I just want to be the next Des Lynam. I want you to give me a job. And at the time I was hosting a game show on Children's BBC called Mobster Lobster, where I dressed up as a pink lobster in the Blue Peter Garden and ran around popping balloons with foam inside, and big starfish were worth 10 pounds and small starfish were worth 5.
Got to do the yards, dude.
Got to do the yards somewhere. But this person sort of said to me, I've seen you hosting Mobster Lobster.
And you're perfect.
We don't know, the total opposite. We don't employ people like you, was the exact phrase.
Really?
Yeah. So I remember leaving that meeting thinking, right, I need to find another way of doing this. But thankfully there was a guy called Niall Sloan who was at the BBC at the time. He's now head of sport for ITV. I called him and I just said, look, I really want to show you that I want to do this. And he said, okay then. And he gave me an ISDN kit, and I'd finish work on a Saturday hosting a show called Sports Round for Children's BBC, and I'd go off travelling to games. And in those days it was the lower reaches because I was starting out. You know, it was 3rd or 4th division football matches, you know, Brighton when they were really struggling, playing at the old athletic stadium, that sort of stuff. And I'd drive myself there, park up, walk in, set my kit up, watch the games, and I might, if I was lucky, do 20-second inserts into BBC Sports final score programme or into Radio 5 Live, one or the other. And this is we're only talking here about 2007, so like a year before I landed the Formula 1 job. But that was a period that, again, you know, when you join the dots backwards, the fact that I was willing to show them that even though, like, because on kids' telly you feel you've got to a certain place in your career, you think you've reached a certain level, and that is asking you to go right back to the start and go again. And I was sort of willing to do that. I think that was probably quite a crucial moment for me.
Yeah, I think you need to be, again, right at the start of the conversation, we said about being open to doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even being open to going back to the start, but proving yourself. And you were doing that by asking people and saying, I'll go down to Brighton. I mean, I wouldn't go down to Brighton being a Palace fan, but, you'd do these things to prove yourself. And if you don't do that, then really the opportunities don't come.
Out there, which is what we were saying earlier.
Yeah, and it turned out to be a good thing. And I remember I then was on the train coming back from somewhere, and I got a phone call from him to ask if I could host Final Score, which was like a big deal.
Wow, yeah.
The first thing I ever hosted for BBC Sport. And the day before I did it, I was sitting at the desk sort of writing my script for the day, and Niall came in and he said to the PA, who was the sort of person responsible for all the logistics in the gallery, he said to the PA, he said, tomorrow, and this was Final Score is on air from like 2:30 till 6 o'clock. And then it only goes on to BBC One for that short bit when the results happen. The rest of it's all on the red button. Yeah. And he said, can you just do me a favour, when Jake's in the chair tomorrow, can you just record 20 minutes? But you can choose which 20 minutes it is, I don't mind, any part of the day. And that was basically a message to me, you better be on the money for the whole time, because I'm watching this. And then 2 or 3 shows later, I was asked to host Football Focus. Again, big deal for me. And as I went into the studio for that moment, he was sitting on the chair in the studio, and he went, have a good one, don't mess it up. Big day for you. But again, like, that was a test. And I'm glad I had that test, because I think if you'd have asked me a few years before what would happen to you in that situation, I would have said, I'd melt, I'd collapse, I wouldn't deal with the pressure. So the fact that I didn't, I remember, I now look back with quite a sense of pride, really, that I was like, I was tested there, and I bloody well rose that challenge, and that was me in my early 20s, really.
But did you feel that at the time, those times, thinking, I have just come through, that's been another sort of challenge, and I've come through it?
Yeah, I think
and actually, I'm doing all right here.
Yeah, well, I think, from what I remember, I was walking back into the studio at that point, a few minutes before an air, and I'd gone to the toilet to sort of talk to myself for a second and say, listen, this is a big moment for you. Which I suppose now you look at as a sort of like meditation moment, or a chance to center yourself. In those days, it was just like, I better have a word with myself. So I basically had a word with myself and said, listen, big moment, don't mess it up, trust yourself, go for it, just see what happens,
And it worked out.
Yeah, it worked out okay.
Also, I want to apologise to people from Brighton. I actually I like Brighton, isn't it?
No, you don't. Liar, Palace fans, come on now.
I don't mind them. They're an all right club, to be fair. They're okay.
Yeah, they're doing well, aren't they?
They are doing all right, yeah.
We're doing all right as well.
We are doing all right, yeah. We're doing okay.
Norwich, though.
Not so good. It's a shame, really, because our club is made of a goalkeeper on a free, couple of fullbacks.
I really like the manager
through the academy. Brilliant, Daniel Farco. We're a hodgepodge of youngsters and freebies and smart signings, and it would be good for the Premier League if we survived. I doubt we will, but we're sadly just shy in terms of quality. We've given it a bloody good go.
Todd Cantwell keeps going in and out of my fantasy team, and each week I do the wrong one. He's on the bench, gets 10 points, comes in, doesn't do anything. I can't quite
That's
get it
youth, right? The sort of the fact that he's young is probably why he's a little bit inconsistent.
Yeah, exactly. That happens. Yeah.
He does his best.
Well, look, shall we round off the pod by asking Jake what we ask all our guests, which is just your advice for anyone listening that might be going through blank moments? And again, that's really interpretive, so it could be mental health issues or literal blank moments or anything. What sort of advice would you pass on?
I can only really advise this from what I've learned myself, I guess. So the number one piece of advice that I would give to anyone, and you hear it a lot, is making sure that you talk to people. It doesn't need to necessarily be someone who's close to you or someone who's around you. It can be anybody, but please, whatever it is that is causing you a difficult moment in your life, share it and talk to people about it. But I guess the other big thing for me is you just don't know what those moments are going to do for you. And it could be the best thing that has ever happened, right? Now, it might not seem like it at the time, but what is the point of thinking anything other than I'm going to turn this around into a positive? And my final sort of mantra for really living with everything in 2020 is whatever it is that's causing your blank moment, regardless of the fault, take on the responsibility. And that is the best way forwards and the best way out of it, because when you do come out the other side, which I'm confident you will know the reason is because you took on the responsibility and you dealt with it.
Yeah.
Best way.
Lovely. Well, I'm going to take on the responsibility of ending the podcast.
Well done.
So, Jake
Whose
Humphrey,
fault is that?
Charles's fault. I'll take the responsibility. Jake Humphrey, thank you so
pleasure.
much.
Thanks for
joining
the
us.
coffee and thanks for the chat. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Well, that was Jake Humphrey on the Blank Podcast. What a great pod.
What a nice guy. Really nice
great
guy.
yeah.
And I really appreciate how open he was with all aspects of his life, really, from social media to, the sort of difficult being bullied at school difficult times moving to London. And actually, it's quite empowering to listen to that and see where he is now and think, well, no, these, you can overcome anything, really.
Yeah, and if you keep putting yourself out there, and obviously he sort of said he believes in fate and stuff, but also he's also put himself out there for things, and he's managed to carve out a really fantastic career for himself, just because he's obviously very, very talented and good at what he does.
Yeah, but it's true. I mean, the other day I tried to got this new agent, so I'm sort of using it as an excuse to get back in contact with people that I've been working with last year. And saying, I've got a new agent now, so I'm getting back, for work. And I did that the other week and got an email back straight away saying, "Oh, we'd love to work with you, Jimmy. Yeah, we'll be in contact."
Oh, that's fantastic.
It reminded me, of that from what Jake was saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
chucking yourself out there a little bit. Sometimes.
Yeah. And not being, not being afraid to go for things, but also not, taking those knockbacks on the chin and using them as a way of fueling, your career and going forward.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Well, look, thank you, Jake, so much for joining us on the podcast. Yeah. Really appreciate it.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Please subscribe.
And if you want to send us a message, you can. Our handle is
@BlankPod.
On various channels, not Snapchat, because we're too old for that.
Not Snapchat. TikTok. We should probably get on TikTok, shouldn't we?
Really?
It's the next... I'm going to get on TikTok.
Are you?
Yeah. Yeah,
it's probably good fun for your stuff.
Well, it's good for comedy, but also it seems quite fun at the moment. I'm sure it will get ruined
slowly.
But it seems like a fun channel, so I might try.
Talking about dark things, I recently watched.
Always a good start.
Well, it's because you said it's nice at the moment. It could slowly deteriorate. I watched this Netflix documentary called "Don't Fuck with Cats."
I've heard about this,
and I've literally watched it the last few days. It blew my mind. I mean, it was insane.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, that sort of, life stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
It was insane.
Wow, I need to watch it.
Yeah. It's it's
proper dark?
It's very, very dark and and quite harrowing in parts, actually. So not anyone for the light, it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah. But I might wait a bit then to watch it when I'm ready.
Yeah. It was fantastic.
I've heard a lot of really good things.
But actually, just be aware that YouTube has got has taken some dark turns in the past.
Anyway, on that note,
TikTok might be the one to go for.
Anyway, on that note, Giles, been lovely podding with you.
Oh, of course,
as ever.
Yeah, thank you,
and thanks to our listeners. Have a wonderful week.
Yeah,
and we'll see you again
week.
soon.
Yeah, bye.
Politics, global warming, male birth control. Nowadays, there's a lot of news, and it can be hard to understand, especially for a simple-minded person like you. That's why The Onion has launched The Topical, a new daily news podcast hosted by me, Leslie Price. Join us each day, and we'll explain all of the day's biggest stories using small words that you just might be able to understand, like bad and happy. From The Onion and Onion Public Radio, this is The Topical, available right now wherever you get your less interesting podcasts.